The night began with embarrassment she did not plan for. She sat at the table long after the others had left, staring at a bill that felt heavier than it should have been. The laughter that once filled the space had faded, replaced by the quiet hum of the restaurant and the soft clink of glasses from other tables. People had promised to stay. They had smiled, ordered freely, and spoken as if the night would last. Then, one by one, they made excuses. Phone calls, early mornings, sudden responsibilities, until only she remained. The waiter returned, polite but firm, placing the bill gently in front of her. She looked at the number and felt her stomach tighten. It wasn't just expensive, it was humiliating. She had not ordered recklessly, she had trusted the group, and now trust had walked away, leaving her alone with the cost. She tried to stay calm. Panic would only make things worse. She checked her bag slowly, hoping she had misremembered how much money she carried. She hadn't. The total was more than she had planned for the entire night. She considered calling someone, but pride stopped her. She didn't want to explain. She didn't want pity. Around her, conversations continued. No one noticed her quiet crisis. That made it hurt more. Being abandoned in public always did. The restaurant itself was unforgiving, elegant, precise, designed for people who belonged. The chairs were comfortable, but the atmosphere demanded composure. This was not a place where you admitted mistakes easily. She straightened her posture, refusing to look small, even if she felt it inside. At another table, a man watched, without staring. He had been there long before the group arrived, long before they laughed too loudly and ordered without thinking. He noticed patterns the way others noticed faces. He saw how people behaved when money was involved, when responsibility disappeared. He recognized abandonment immediately, not because it was rare, but because it was predictable. The Mafia boss did not interrupt. He never rushed moments like this. He waited, observing how she handled the situation. He noticed she didn't wave the waiter over angrily. She didn't complain. She didn't blame anyone out loud. She simply sat with the problem, breathing evenly, thinking. That composure mattered to him. People revealed their character when things went wrong. She finally looked up and caught the waiter's eye. She asked quietly if she could have a moment. Her voice didn't shake. The waiter nodded, stepping back. She felt exposed anyway. Time stretched. Every second felt like judgment. She thought about offering to pay part now and come back later. She thought about explaining. None of it felt right. Dignity was fragile in moments like this. The man at the other table shifted slightly. It was a small movement, but it changed the rhythm of the room. The staff noticed. They always did. He didn't signal loudly. He didn't call anyone over. He waited until the moment was exact. She stared at the bill again, reading the numbers as if they might change. They didn't. The weight of being left behind pressed down on her chest. It wasn't just money. It was the realization that people she trusted had decided she could handle the consequences alone. That realization stayed with you. The Mafia boss stood, slowly, not dramatically, just enough to be noticed. The room adjusted instinctively. Conversation softened. A waiter approached him without being called. He spoke quietly, his voice low and controlled. No one else needed to hear. When the waiter returned to her table, the bill was gone. For a moment, she thought there had been a mistake. She looked up, confused. The waiter smiled politely and said, "It's been taken care of." That was all. No explanation, no discussion. Her first reaction was disbelief. Her second was embarrassment. She looked around instinctively, trying to understand who would do that. That's when her eyes met his. He didn't smile. He didn't nod. He simply held her gaze for a brief moment, then looked away. The message was clear without words. This was not charity. This was correction. She felt something shift inside her. Relief came first, sharp and unexpected. Then something else followed. Awareness. Someone had seen what happened. Someone had decided it wasn't acceptable. That mattered more than the money. The Mafia boss sat back down, as if nothing unusual had happened. To him, it hadn't. He believed certain things should not be allowed to stand. Public abandonment was one of them. Letting someone be humiliated over another person's carelessness disrupted balance. Balance always needed to be restored. She gathered her things slowly, still processing what just happened. She didn't rush over to thank him. She didn't make a scene. Instinct told her that would be wrong. Respect was shown through restraint here. She stood, steadying herself, and walked toward the exit with her head held high. As she passed his table, he spoke without looking up. "Don't let people leave you holding what isn't yours." His voice was calm, almost casual, but the words landed deeply. She paused for half a second, then nodded. "I won't," she replied quietly. That was enough. Outside, the night air felt cooler, cleaner. The weight she had been carrying eased. She hadn't been rescued, she had been acknowledged. There was a difference. One created dependence, the other created strength. Inside, the restaurant returned to its rhythm. The staff resumed their routines. The Mafia boss finished his drink. The situation was resolved. No noise, no drama. Just balance restored. For her, the night would not be remembered for the embarrassment. It would be remembered for the moment she learned something important. Being left behind did not mean being powerless, and sometimes the quietest actions carried the most authority. She walked for several minutes before realizing her hands were still shaking, not from fear, but from the release of tension she had been holding since the bill landed on the table. The streetlights blurred slightly as she slowed her pace, letting the night settle around her. What stayed with her wasn't the money that had been paid. It was the fact that someone had noticed. In a room full of people who chose comfort over responsibility, one man had chosen balance. That realization followed her home. Sleep didn't come easily. Her mind replayed the evening, not with shame, but with clarity. She saw the smiles that disappeared when the bill arrived, the casual excuses, the ease with which people abandoned a shared responsibility. She understood now that loyalty was often tested in small moments, not dramatic ones, and those small moments revealed everything. The next morning, she woke with a strange calm. The embarrassment she expected to feel wasn't there. Instead, there was resolve. She brewed coffee slowly, thinking about how easily she had trusted others to do the right thing. Trust wasn't wrong. Blind trust was. That distinction mattered. The people who had walked away avoided her messages that day. Not directly, just delayed replies, short answers, polite distance. They knew, maybe not about the Mafia boss, but about their own behavior. Guilt made people uncomfortable. Silence made it worse. She didn't chase explanations. She didn't ask for apologies. She observed. Across the city, the Mafia boss moved through his morning routine with the same precision he applied to everything. The incident from the night before barely registered as unusual. He had corrected an imbalance. That was all. He didn't need recognition for it. In his world, actions spoke long after words were forgotten. She returned to her routine, but something had shifted. At work, she listened more carefully. She noticed how people claimed credit, how they avoided accountability. These patterns had always existed. She had simply chosen not to see them before. Now, awareness came naturally. A message arrived from one of the people who had left early, an apology wrapped in excuses. She read it once and didn't respond immediately. Time, she realized, was a powerful filter. People revealed sincerity when forced to sit with their own discomfort. She waited. Days passed. The memory of the restaurant no longer carried embarrassment. It carried instruction. She began setting quiet boundaries, saying no without explaining, leaving early when situations felt one-sided. The changes were subtle but effective. The Mafia boss heard nothing further, which told him everything he needed to know. No follow-up chaos, no public scenes. Order had held. He preferred it that way. Influence worked best when it trained others to correct themselves. She ran into one of the group at a cafe a week later. The interaction was polite but strained. They spoke carefully, aware something had changed. She was calm, steady, unmoved. That composure unsettled them more than anger ever could. Walking away from that encounter, she felt lighter, not because she had won something, but because she had learned to stop carrying what isn't hers. Responsibility, she understood, should be shared or refused. Another invitation arrived, similar setting, similar promises. She declined politely, not out of fear, but out of discernment. She no longer needed to prove she belonged in rooms that demanded she pay the price for others. The city continued around her, indifferent, yet responsive. People adjusted to the energy she carried now. Less access, clearer limits. Respect followed quietly. For the Mafia boss, the night faded into routine memory. But the principle remained reinforced. Dignity mattered. And when dignity was threatened publicly, correction did not need to be loud. It needed to be final. For her, the lesson settled deeply. Being abandoned once had taught her how to never abandon herself again. She began to notice how her choices felt more deliberate now. She no longer agreed to plans just to be included. Inclusion meant nothing if it came with hidden costs. She trusted her instincts more, especially when something felt uneven. That trust brought calm. Calm brought clarity. At work, she handled conversations differently. When people hinted instead of speaking plainly, she asked simple questions. When responsibility drifted toward her unfairly, she paused before accepting it. Often, the pause alone was enough for others to step up. She learned that silence, used well, could rebalance a situation without conflict. One evening, she passed the same restaurant again. The lights glowed warmly through the windows. For a brief moment, her chest tightened. Then it released. The place no longer held power over her. It was just a building. The lesson had moved with her. The people who walked away continued to drift farther from her life. Not dramatically, just naturally. Conversations shortened, invitations stopped. She didn't mourn it. Relationships that couldn't survive accountability weren't meant to last. The Mafia boss, meanwhile, attended a private dinner elsewhere. Different city, same rules. He watched how people ordered, how they spoke to staff, how they handled shared costs. Money revealed character quickly. He valued that clarity. It saved time. She received another apology message days later. This one sounded more sincere. Less explanation, more ownership. She acknowledged it politely without reopening the past. Closure didn't require revisiting the bill. It required recognizing the change. She moved on. Her confidence grew quietly, not the kind that sought validation, but the kind that knew when to walk away. She felt less pressure to impress and more comfort being herself. That shift affected everything: how she dressed, how she spoke, how she rested. A colleague asked her once how she stayed so composed in awkward situations. She smiled and said, "I stopped carrying things that aren't mine." It was the truth, stated simply. The Mafia boss returned home one night and poured a drink. He reflected briefly on balance, how easily it was disturbed, and how simply it could be restored with the right action at the right time. He slept well. Order was intact. She planned a small trip for herself. Nothing extravagant, just intentional. She chose the dates, the place, the pace. Traveling alone felt empowering, not lonely. She enjoyed the freedom of being responsible only for herself. During that trip, she met new people. Conversations were easy because expectations were clear. Everyone paid their share. Everyone showed up. She smiled at the simplicity of it. This was how it should be. Back home, life resumed with a steadier rhythm. She noticed fewer emotional spikes, fewer disappointments. Her boundaries filtered problems before they reached her. Peace followed naturally.
The restaurant night became a story she rarely told. When she did, it wasn't with bitterness, it was with understanding. People listened closely, sensing the lesson beneath the words. The Mafia boss never crossed her path again. He didn't need to. His action had already done its work. Influence didn't require repetition. She moved forward knowing one thing clearly. Dignity was not something others granted, it was something she maintained. And once she learned that, no one could leave her holding a bill that wasn't hers again. She found that her sense of worth no longer rose and fell with other people's behavior. That change surprised her most. Before, disappointment lingered because she measured herself through how others treated her. Now, she measured situations instead. Was it fair? Was it balanced? If not, she stepped back without guilt. That shift made her feel lighter, steadier, and far more in control of her own life. Her conversations became more intentional. She asked clearer questions and listened closely to the answers. When someone avoided responsibility, she noticed immediately. When someone showed reliability, she valued it deeply. Her circle grew smaller, but stronger. Quality replaced quantity, and she found peace in that exchange. One afternoon, she received a message from someone new inviting her to dinner. The invitation was respectful, clear about plans and costs. She smiled while reading it. This was different. Awareness had changed the kinds of people she attracted. She accepted calmly, without anxiety or expectation. The Mafia boss continued moving through his world with precision. Situations like the restaurant incident reinforced his belief that small interventions often prevented larger problems. He didn't think of it as kindness, he thought of it as maintenance. Balance required upkeep. She prepared for the dinner without overthinking. No nervous energy, no need to impress. She arrived on time, confident, observant. The evening flowed easily. When the bill came, it was split smoothly, without discussion or discomfort. She noticed the contrast and felt quietly satisfied. Later that night, she reflected on how different the experience felt, not because it was better, but because it was fair. Fairness, she realized, was what she valued most now. It created safety without control, and freedom without chaos. The people who once left her behind faded completely from her life, not with confrontation, but with distance. She no longer felt the need to explain herself to them. Explanation belonged to the past. Clarity belonged to the present. The Mafia boss heard of a similar situation elsewhere, a group leaving someone behind with a shared cost. He corrected it quickly, efficiently. Patterns repeated themselves, but so did solutions. He understood human nature well enough to not be surprised by either. She began mentoring a younger colleague who struggled with boundaries. She didn't tell her story directly. She spoke about balance, about choosing when to stay and when to leave. The advice felt natural to give. It had been earned. Her days felt fuller, not busier. She spent time on things that returned energy instead of draining it. Evenings were calmer. Sleep came easier. Emotional exhaustion was replaced by steady confidence. Occasionally, she passed restaurants like the one from that night. They no longer triggered discomfort. Instead, they reminded her how far she had come. Places lost their power when lessons were learned. The Mafia boss remained unseen, his influence quiet but intact. He had restored balance once and moved on. That was enough. His influence lived in outcomes, not memory. She trusted herself now in ways she hadn't before. Trusting herself meant she didn't need to rely on others to validate her decisions. That independence felt like freedom. When challenges arose, she handled them with patience instead of urgency. She had learned that rushing often created the very problems she once feared. By the time she realized it, the night of the unpaid bill had transformed into a turning point. Not because someone paid for her, but because she learned she never had to carry what wasn't hers again. She noticed how calm had become her default state. Situations that once would have caused anxiety now felt manageable. She didn't rush to fix things or explain herself. She waited, observed, and chose her response carefully. That patience saved her energy and protected her dignity. Calm, she learned, was not weakness, it was control. Her relationships grew healthier because she stopped over-giving. She listened without trying to rescue. She helped without sacrificing herself. When someone crossed a line, she addressed it simply or stepped away. There was no drama in it, just clarity. People adjusted quickly when they realized she would no longer carry what wasn't hers. She received an invitation to another group outing, similar to the one that had gone wrong months earlier. This time, expectations were clear from the beginning. Everyone agreed on plans and costs openly. She smiled at how different it felt. Transparency changed everything. The Mafia boss continued his life with the same principles: order, fairness, and consequence. He believed money revealed intent faster than words ever could. How people handled shared responsibility, it told him exactly who they were. That knowledge guided his decisions daily. She began trusting her instincts fully. If something felt unbalanced, she stepped back. If something felt solid, she leaned in. Life became simpler when she stopped questioning her intuition. Confidence grew quietly, rooted in experience rather than hope. One evening, she treated herself to dinner alone. She chose the place, ordered what she wanted, and paid without stress. The experience felt empowering. She realized she no longer associated restaurants with embarrassment. She had reclaimed that space for herself. The people who once left her behind rarely crossed her mind now. When they did, there was no anger, just understanding. Everyone made choices. Some choices revealed character more clearly than intended. The Mafia boss corrected another imbalance elsewhere, quietly, as always. He never sought gratitude. Respect was enough. Order restored was its own reward. She noticed others began coming to her for advice, not because she spoke loudly, but because she moved confidently. People trusted calm energy. They trusted clarity. She shared what she could without taking on their burdens. Her life felt more aligned. Work, friendships, and personal time balanced naturally. She wasn't chasing peace anymore. She was living inside it. Looking back, she understood that being left with the bill had not been humiliation. It had been exposure. Exposure to truth, to imbalance, to her own strength. That awareness had changed everything. She moved forward knowing one thing clearly. Fairness was not something to hope for. It was something to insist on, quietly and firmly. And with that understanding, she continued her life, steady, aware, and unburdened. She began to recognize moments of imbalance almost instantly. A delayed reply, a vague plan, a responsibility that wasn't clearly shared. Where she once ignored these signs, she now paused. That pause gave her power. It allowed her to choose rather than react. Life felt less chaotic when she trusted that instinct. Her sense of self grew steadier. She no longer questioned whether she deserved fairness. She expected it quietly. When it wasn't present, she adjusted without resentment. Walking away felt natural, not dramatic. That ease surprised her. It was proof that she had changed. At work, she was offered a role that required more responsibility. This time, expectations were discussed clearly. Compensation, boundaries, accountability, all laid out. She accepted confidently. Transparency felt respectful. She noticed how differently people treated her when she didn't hesitate to ask questions. The Mafia boss continued his routines with measured calm. He valued clarity in every transaction. Ambiguity created problems. Clear terms created order. That philosophy guided everything he did, from business to brief public interventions like the one at the restaurant. He rarely thought about the people afterward. The correction mattered more than the memory. She spent more time alone, by choice, not avoidance. Solitude felt restorative. It allowed her to reflect, plan, and enjoy her own company. She realized she no longer filled time to avoid feeling left out. She chose how to spend her evenings deliberately. An old acquaintance reached out, attempting to reconnect. The message was friendly, but vague. She responded politely and asked direct questions. The answers were unclear. She wished them well and let the conversation end. No guilt followed. That alone felt like progress. The lesson from the night continued to echo in small ways. She always clarified plans. She always knew her limits. She paid attention to how people handled shared responsibility. These habits protected her without hardening her. The Mafia boss heard a brief mention of the restaurant incident weeks later through an assistant. He dismissed it. The matter had been resolved correctly. Nothing more was needed. He preferred outcomes that required no follow-up. She attended another event, larger this time. Conversations flowed easily. When the bill arrived, it was handled smoothly, almost automatically. She noticed how calm she felt. There was no anticipation of discomfort. Trust, when earned, felt different. Later, she walked home under soft streetlights, thinking about how far she'd come. The memory of being left behind no longer carried weight. It had become a reference point, not a wound. She understood now that dignity didn't depend on how others behaved. It depended on how she responded. That understanding stayed with her, steady and quiet, guiding every decision forward. And with each passing day, she felt more certain she would never again carry a burden that wasn't hers. She began to see how much energy she used to spend trying to keep things smooth for everyone else. Now, that energy stayed with her. She used it to think clearly, to rest properly, and to make decisions without pressure. Life felt less rushed. She no longer felt responsible for fixing situations she didn't create. That release brought a deep sense of relief. Her presence started to change the way rooms felt, not because she demanded attention, but because she brought steadiness with her. People slowed down when they spoke to her. They explained themselves more clearly. They followed through more often. Calm had a way of setting expectations without saying a word. She noticed how differently she handled disappointment now. When plans fell through or people failed to show up, she didn't internalize it. She adjusted and moved on. The disappointment no longer defined her value. It simply informed her choices going forward. That distinction gave her peace. The Mafia boss continued his life with the same quiet authority. Situations like the restaurant incident reinforced his belief that dignity mattered in public spaces. Allowing someone to be humiliated over money disrupted order. Correcting it quietly preserved balance. That was all the justification he ever needed. She received recognition at work for her consistency, not for being loud or visible, but for being reliable. Reliability, she learned, built trust faster than charm. She accepted the acknowledgement with calm gratitude, without downplaying it or over-explaining herself. Her social life became simpler, fewer plans, but better ones. When she agreed to something, she knew exactly what she was committing to. When she declined, she did so without guilt. Boundaries had become natural, not defensive. Occasionally, she thought of the man who paid the bill, not with curiosity or longing, but with respect. He had acted without expectation. That action had changed her path in ways he would never see. She understood now that some people influence your life without staying in it. The betrayer from that night became a distant memory. Their absence felt normal. She didn't wonder how they were doing. Closure had come quietly, without conversation. The Mafia boss handled new matters, new people, new corrections. The world kept producing the same patterns, and he kept maintaining order. Efficiency remained his priority. Drama was wasteful. She treated herself to small moments of joy. Coffee in the morning sun, long walks, unhurried evenings. These moments felt richer now that she wasn't carrying unspoken resentment or obligation. Peace had room to grow. When conflicts arose, she addressed them early or stepped away before they grew. She no longer believed that endurance proved strength. Choice did. Her confidence became deeply rooted. It didn't wait of her with praise or criticism. It came from knowing her limits and honoring them. That kind of confidence couldn't be taken away. The lesson from that night had expanded beyond money. It applied to time, energy, and emotion. She no longer paid for other people's comfort at her own expense. The Mafia boss remained unseen, his single action complete. He had paid a bill, but corrected something far larger. He had restored balance where it had been broken. And she lived on, steady and unburdened, knowing that even when everyone else walked away, she would never abandon herself again. She reached a point where nothing from that night felt unfinished. The embarrassment had dissolved completely, replaced by understanding. What once felt like rejection now felt like redirection. She no longer measured moments by how others showed up, but how she chose to respond. That shift had quietly reshaped her life. Her days flowed with a steady rhythm. Work felt purposeful. Relationships felt honest. She no longer second-guessed herself when setting limits. Saying no felt as natural as saying yes when something aligned. That balance kept her grounded. Sometimes she noticed people testing her boundaries in small ways. A vague plan, an assumption she would cover something. She responded calmly, asking simple questions or stepping back. Most people adjusted immediately. Those who didn't revealed themselves quickly. Either way, clarity arrived without conflict. The Mafia boss continued his life unchanged. He didn't revisit the restaurant incident. He rarely revisited any correction once it was done. Order had been restored. That was enough. His influence lived in outcomes, not memory. She treated herself with more respect now. Time was protected. Energy was conserved. She no longer overextended to maintain harmony. Harmony, she learned, could not be bought with self-sacrifice. It had to be mutual. On one quiet evening, she passed another group laughing outside a restaurant. For a moment, she remembered how it felt to sit alone with a bill that wasn't hers. Instead of pain, she felt gratitude. That moment had taught her something priceless. The people who once walked away never re-entered her life, not out of bitterness, but because growth had created distance. She didn't miss them. She missed who she used to be less. The lesson stayed simple and powerful. Never carry responsibility that others refuse to share. Money had only been the beginning. The real lesson was about worth. She moved forward with calm certainty, knowing she could handle discomfort without losing dignity. That knowledge made her resilient. No situation felt threatening anymore. The Mafia boss remained unseen, his single action complete. He had paid a bill, but corrected something far larger. He had restored balance where it had been broken. And she lived on, steady and unburdened, knowing that even when everyone else walked away, she would never abandon herself again.